Welcome to today's webinar on the Great Lakes Way. We have like I said, a good agenda planned, and we're happy to have you here with a pretty good turnout of folks from around the region. I'm Tyler Cliffman. I'm a planner with SEMCOG working on projects around parks and trails and sustainability. And I'll be kind of facilitating our discussions today. We'll have a main presentation from John Hardig on the Great Lakes Way. He's representing that project with the Community Foundation from Southeast Michigan. And then we're going to discuss the opportunity with a panel of experts with a number of different perspectives. So this project is supported by the National Park Service. We're happy to have Pat Lydon here from the Rivers Trails Conservation Assistance Program to tell us a little more about that. Andrea LaFontaine is the director of the Michigan Trails and Greenways Alliance, and she's going to share a statewide perspective. And then we'll hear more locally about what a project like this means here in Southeast Michigan from Jerry Santoro with the Macomb County Planning and Economic Development Department. And John will stick around for the panel too. So we have some questions that we're going to go over with them, but please feel free to submit questions as well that you have for the panelists as the conversation goes on, and we'll get to them as we have time. But before we get started, I want to do just some light housekeeping here. For the webinar will be recorded, and everyone who's registered for this will get an email with a link to watch that. It's also going to be posted on our website with all our other webinars, which can be viewed on demand after the fact. And any other resources that come up, links or websites or things that any of our panelists or presenters mention, we will include that in the follow-up email as well. So be on the lookout for that if you're looking for any of the materials that folks mentioned and you don't have quite enough time to jot it down. And as I said, yes, we are looking for questions on this. We want to hear from you. Please do use the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen though, as opposed to the chat. That's going to help us keep track of those questions better and follow up with folks to make sure that we get them answered. All right. And I want to just do a brief introduction to some of SEMCOG's role in this project and regional trail projects in general. So you may or may not be familiar with some of our planning work, but we have a lot of different plans for the region that touch on a lot of topics related to this, being parks and recreation and trails, bicycle and pedestrian mobility, water resources. And these plans all have a lot of policy guidance, actions for local governments, data resources and maps that folks can use to develop their own priorities at the local level as well. And we also keep a lot of that information on our website in more interactive forms with our Southeast Michigan Park Finder, Trail Explorer, and a map for this project. So I just want to show some quick examples of what that looks like. Here is our Southeast Michigan Park Finder app. If you aren't familiar with this, I encourage you to download it to your smartphone. And there you have over 2,800 parks in the region at your fingertips with all the information about what they have to do. So as it relates to this project, say you're looking for a place to put a kayak in. You can click water recreation, paddling trails and launches. So it zeroes in on all of the launch points and all of the water trails, and just gives you more information about how to connect with those resources. We've also collected 360-degree imagery on almost 1,000 miles of our greenways and our water trails. So while the lines on this map may look a little bit like spaghetti, they give everyone a chance to kind of to really experience those trails before setting out on them and see how accessible they are, what the experience might be like. So here's an example along the Detroit River International Wildlife Refuge, new pathways through Humbug Marsh, and lets you explore those there. Or on a cold day like today, maybe you want to look at some of our water resources. Here's the Blue Ways of St. Clair, some of these really natural remote areas of our region that maybe you've heard about but haven't had a chance to visit. This is just a chance to kind of plan some of your upcoming trips. So a couple SEMCOG resources on our website. The last one I want to share directly related to this is about the Great Lakes Way. So you'll hear a little bit more about the vision that John's going to share, how to stay connected, and then tour all these points of interest along the way as well, and learn more about those places and link to the folks that are going to have more information about those. So a lot more to come on all of this. Just wanted to kind of give a brief introduction to this project and SEMCOG support for it. And with that, I am excited to hear more about it and want to introduce John Hardig, who is representing the project with the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan. So from there, take it away, John.
Thanks, Tyler, so much. It's a real pleasure to be with everyone this morning. And thanks to SEMCOG for hosting it. But this is a new initiative, as Tyler said, of the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan. And let's see here, just one second. The Community Foundation has been at Greenways for quite a long time. In 2001, it established the Greenways Initiative. It has raised $35 million of private and corporate dollars to help make match on Greenways grants, and that has leveraged $150 million to build more than 100 miles of greenways in Southeast Michigan. Taking that thinking to the next level, we have a unique opportunity to establish a national and potentially eventually international blue-green way to improve close to home outdoor recreation, enhance regional competitive advantage, help attract and retain employees for businesses, celebrate, protect, and capitalize on our defining natural resources, and connect people to these amazing natural resources and connect people to each other. And along this Great Lakes Way, you will find two wetlands of international importance, one of the largest freshwater deltas in the world, the St. Clair Flats, 4 important bird areas designated by National Audubon, the only international heritage river system in the world, Detroit River, and the only international wildlife refuge in North America, the Detroit River International Wildlife Refuge, and a regional shorebird reserve designated under the Western Hemispheric Shorebird Reserve Network. So the Community Foundation got all the right Greenways players together initially to form an advisory committee to develop a vision for the Great Lakes Way and to provide the Community Foundation with advice on moving forward. And on this slide, you'll see some of the logos of organizations representative, everything from the National Park Service to the Michigan Trails and Greenways Alliance to the Metro Parks, to Detroit Greenways Coalition, a really good cross section of organizations. The vision that this group came up with is that all residents and visitors of Southeast Michigan are connected to and benefit from world-class fresh water, wildlife and recreation, and heritage right in our backyard through a Great Lakes Way. Well, what is a Great Lakes Way? It is an interconnected set of 156 miles of blueways, that is water trails, and 160 miles of greenways stretching from southern Lake Huron, Port Huron, through the Michigan-Ohio border on western Lake Erie and essentially Toledo, Ohio. Here is the vision map on the left-hand side of your screen, the green being the greenways, and the blue being the blueways. And as Tyler mentioned, there are points of interest along this that you can see on that interactive map of SEMCOG. And on the vision map, there's about 20 of them right now, but that list of points of interest will grow over time. We will be adding to that regularly to profile unique sites of ecological significance, historical and cultural significance, and outdoor recreational experiences as well. On the right-hand side, you see the back of the vision map where there's a call out to a dozen different places, everything like historical places like the Edsel and Eleanor Ford House and Belle Isle and Fort Wayne, to the new Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Centennial Park that will soon to be underway on the banks of the Detroit River. We then had a landscape architecture firm help us with mapping out the Great Lakes Way, like how much of the trail is already completed. First and foremost, all the water trails are done, and there are access points for all of those. So all the water trails are usable right now. The dark green is what is completed, about 61 miles or 38%. The light green is partially complete here. That's about 42 miles or 26%. So really about 64% of the Great Lakes Way is usable right now. Then there you see the sort of rust color on here. The orange color is the planned route at about 40 miles or 25%. And then some of the purple there being, there's a gap. We need to both do planning and then eventually construction, and that's about 17 miles or 11%. So what are the benefits of a Great Lakes Way? The Great Lakes Way will promote outdoor recreation. We all know that outdoor recreation in Michigan is a $26.6 billion industry, billion with a B. It'll catalyze economic development. Think of the Detroit Riverwalk, the #1 Riverwalk in the United States. In its first 10 years, they raised $140 million to build the first phases of the Riverwalk. That in turn leveraged another $1 billion of economic investment in the Riverwalk area. What amazing return on investment. It'll increase adjacent property values. There's lots of studies out there throughout North America. One from Austin, Texas shows the closer you are to a greenway, the higher your property value, and that showed that the mean sales price of a home was 20% higher if you're near a greenway. It'll connect people with nature. Most people are still disconnected from nature, and this will help us reconnect people with nature. It'll celebrate historical and cultural assets. It'll promote much needed conservation and environmental education to develop a stewardship ethic in the next generation. It'll support healthful living and improve quality of life. And it'll make, our big picture goal is to make Southeast Michigan the #1 freshwater recreation destination in the United States. We would like to brand it. Most of you know the Appalachian Trail on the eastern seaboard, the Pacific Crest Trail on the western seaboard, and the Continental Divide Trail in the Rocky Mountains. Well, we would like the Great Lakes Way to be our regional trail of national significance. One of the models we're looking at, we would like to get a national designation, and hopefully with that would come some money. This is one model, the Chesapeake Bay Gateway and Trails Network. It's been around since 1998, and in the most recent fiscal year, it got $1.4 million in federal funding. So that's what we would like to do. But we also have another unique opportunity. And back when they announced the Gordie Howe International Bridge, they put together focus groups on each side of the river. And we brought together the Greenways folks from the Canadian side with all the Greenway folks from the US side. And we did a US-Canada Greenways vision map that called for a dedicated lane on the bicycle and pedestrian lane on the Gordie Howe Bridge, improvements to the tunnel bus system, and then eventually a ferry system going back and forth, much like we had 100 years ago across the Detroit River. So we now have 2 of those. We have a commitment for the dedicated lane on the Gordie Howe International Bridge, and we've seen improvements to the tunnel bus system to take bicycles. Here's a rendering of the new Gordie Howe International Bridge with its dedicated bicycle and pedestrian lane that will open in 2024. And anyone who is near the river sees the towers that are being constructed right now from a distance. When you land, when you come off the Gordie Howe Bridge in Windsor there, it will land right in the vicinity of all these conservation areas. Those of you who know Windsor, they have Ojibwe Prairie Complex, which is a complex of tall grass prairies. There's also a piece of land that they're going to acquire, Ojibwe Shores. All of that will be combined in the future into the second national urban park in Canada called Ojibwe. And what an amazing thing to land in a national urban park in Canada. Also, Windsor and Essex County have amazing greenways, and they are part of what they call the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail that goes from the St. Lawrence River along Lake Ontario, along Lake Erie, up Lake Huron, around Georgian Bay, and all the way to Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. But what an opportunity we have in 2024 to connect the Canadian greenways, 3,000 kilometers of the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail to the Great Lakes Way and the Iron Bell Trail with its combined 3,500 kilometers of trails. What an amazing opportunity we have. So the next steps for the Community Foundation are to engage communities, to build support for the initiative, to raise funding for it, and to seek this national designation for the Great Lakes Way. As Tyler said, there's a great website. SEMCOG has the interactive map. If you're interested in more, you can go to greatlakesway.org. And with that, I will turn it back to Tyler. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, John. That was a great overview. And we are going to jump in now to our panel discussion to kind of dive into some of those details. So I will have our panelists each give a brief introduction. So we're gonna start basically with our national perspective and work our way down local, just to kind of hear a little bit more about this. But so let's kick it off with Pat Lydon from the National Park Service. Tell us just a little bit more about yourself and your work as it relates to this.
Hey, Tyler, thanks a lot. Good morning, everybody. It is really great to be here. My name is Patrick Lydon. I'm a landscape architect with the National Park Service Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program. RTCA is a community partnership program. We provide technical assistance to local governments or community organizations that are planning outdoor recreation or conservation of natural resources. We are excited to be partnered with the Community Foundation of Southeast Michigan for the assistance on the Great Lakes Way. And most recently, we've been working with them to develop a short film to help introduce this project and highlight the Great Lakes Way. This film will help to explain what the vision is and what the initiative of this initiative. And it will help to build funding and engage communities and awareness of the Great Lakes Way. So we'll be out this spring doing filming and conducting interviews. So if you see us out this summer, or you're out in the area and you see us, please stop by and say hi. And some of the National Park Service perspective on trails and my perspective on trails is that trails provide close to home access to diverse outdoor recreation opportunities. They improve communities by repurposing vacant and abandoned lands. They connect communities and improve the quality of life for residents and the users. And trails and parks should provide equitable access to our nation's land and waters. So with that, we are excited to be a part of this project and excited to assist the Great Lakes Way in providing these opportunities.
Great. Thanks, Pat. Next up, let's hear from Andrea.
Good morning, everyone. Andrea LaFontaine with Michigan Trails and Greenways Alliance. We are the statewide nonprofit that represents non-motorized trail use here in Michigan. We're a member-based organization. Our members are comprised of parks and rec departments, municipalities, individuals, businesses, and friends of various trail networks throughout the state. So our organization has been particularly focused on connectivity, not just connecting trails to various resources, but also connecting trails to one another, recognizing that people don't just want to hop on a trail and know that it ends randomly, but can we connect it to our neighboring town or our neighboring county or a community asset? What does that look like? How does that drive economic development and other things that we're going to talk about in a little bit, but excited to be here today. So thanks, Tyler, for having me.
Great. And now Jerry Santoro in Macomb.
Thank you, Tyler, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm from Macomb County Department of Planning and Economic Development, and the department head for Parks and Natural Resources. And a lot of that includes what we call our local blue economy. Our blue economy is really talking about how tourism and economic development and funding all sort of participate in access to our water. So connecting people to our water is the main goal of what we're doing from a planning agency perspective. Some of that really includes like Lake St. Clair is really our access to the Great Lakes for the region, as well as the Detroit River, Lake Erie, and St. Clair River. But historically, culturally, the river is why we developed where we did. And we have such a rich history all the way from, fur traders, ribbon farmers, culturally speaking, and then, shipbuilding, manufacturing. But recreation has always been a key part of that, why people want to get out on the water. So our blue economy in Macomb County, it really is an example of a very robust recreational boating and fishing industry, not just in the Great Lakes region, but nationally it's recognized. And, we have over 16,000 boat slips. There's just very few counties in the country that would have something like that. And then recreational fishing, we attract national fishing tournaments from the top brass of that every single year. We have almost 20 species of fish on our shores that are naturally nothing stocked. It's all sort of natural. When you have the upper Great Lakes going into the lower Great Lakes, we're really blessed with, just an abundance of a great location. And besides manufacturing and shipping, but all of these recreational aspects really, are a major part of our economy. It's somewhere between 1.2 and $2 billion industry on an annual basis, between boat sales right down to dining on the water, right? So it's pretty amazing what it contributes to our region, and maybe not recognized fully for what it should be. And that's partly what this is about. Then, of course, the funding is a major piece of this. So we see philanthropically through like Community Foundation, Southeast Michigan's had a long-term commitment to this, but a lot of the federal dollars like Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, the state, other philanthropic opportunities, even regionally, all those are painting a meaningful picture for us to continue our success. We have like the city of St. Clair Shores right now, for instance, is expanding their pier, making it a walkable pier district on the north end of their nautical mile. It's a very exciting, contribution to the region. Somewhere we'll be able to walk, go to a restaurant, see the boats, and get out on the water. Another place we've seen major shoreline restorations at Lake St. Clair Metro Park, Brandenburg Park up in Chesterfield, and now at Ford's Cove is going to be undergoing a major restoration. And more recently, we have the St. Clair Macomb Birding Trail. We recognize what Detroit River was doing and up in Saginaw Bay, and so we thought, let's put together a birding trail, and that's ready to be launched this spring. And so we're very excited about our opportunity, and I'm sure a lot of people on right now can sort of look to this local effort and sort of say, hey, that's exactly what we're dealing with. So, each of us have our own story, but we all contribute to it regionally. So thank you.
Yeah, those are all great introductions to think about in context with such an exciting project like this. And I want to kind of build on some of the points that Jerry brought up. But this project is really going to support outdoor recreation, which brings tourism. And a lot of those initiatives that you mentioned, Jerry, are really good examples of that. I'm wondering from some of our other panelists if you have some examples you might want to highlight where improving access, you've really seen that direct correlation with tourism and more activity, and how economic development is tied to trails, either examples within the region or maybe even in other parts of the state.
I can take a stab at that one first if you'd like.
Yeah.
So when I think of economic development and trails and kind of the business creation and expansion that goes with it, one in the region that comes to mind is the airline trail in Wixom and the businesses that kind of have really embraced the trails, right? We see, I know the DNR has the Pure Michigan Trails and Trail Towns. Trail towns are fantastic, right? They embrace this amenity in their community, and the businesses do as well, because they see the economic impact that comes from trail users. I mean, people using trails, they want to go to a coffee shop, they want to stop at a brewery, they want to grab ice cream, they want to go somewhere. And all of those small businesses are what make our small communities whole. So we see those industries and those smaller things popping up with the trail connectivity. We can also talk about trail events that also boost like the tourism aspect and people wanting to participate in events, whether they be short distance or long distance on trails. Our organization has seen increases in people wanting to go like the greater distance and participate in like destination trail events. So one that's very relevant to the area is Great Lake to Lake Route 1, which connects South Haven over to Port Huron. And it's a framework of 19 different trail networks that connect to one another, going through various towns throughout the state. But we've seen an influx in riders who want to do this ride over the course of maybe like 2 to 5 days and stop along the way, visit these small towns, hear about the history, and stimulate those local economies. So we see it firsthand, but not that I'm partial to any, but always looking to see what John is doing over on the airline trail is a pretty good indicator of what can be replicated elsewhere.
Yeah, those are great examples. John?
Yeah, Tyler, just think of, the perception of downriver of Detroit and heavy industry and brownfield sites. And it just, one of the ugliest sites in all of the Detroit River was the McClough Steel site. Well, through a community partnership, they cleaned up the former Chrysler brake and paint plant site in Trenton, which is next to Humbug Marsh, the only wetland of international importance in Michigan. And they built a visitor center in there and a 700-foot pier that goes into the river and a kayak launch and 3 wildlife observation decks. That is now connected to 50 miles of greenways to the south, 50 miles of greenways to the north, and new businesses are opening. And the first one is a Wild Birds Unlimited store has opened in close proximity to it. A new restaurant called The Grotto has opened on Van Horn Road. A waterfront restaurant called The Waterfront has opened in Gibraltar. A new coffee shop called Elizabeth Perk, right next to Elizabeth Park, is open, all on the Greenway trails. So it's already had an impact in the local community, and we just want this to spread throughout the whole corridor.
Thanks. Jerry, I know that you mentioned some of these examples. Is there anything more from your perspective that you'd want to add to from the Blue Economy side of things?
Yeah, I mean, so, Lake St. Clair, connects up to the flats at the north end and connects to the Grosse Points in Detroit at the south end. So, understanding ourselves as a regional player is then very important for us. And really, honestly, that's where the St. Clair Macomb Birding Trail sort of was birthed out of this effort. Because we recognize that we have these significant areas all along the trail, right? Or along the lake, and St. Clair County also did. So we invited them to work with us on a combined trail, and the enthusiasm that we're already seeing from this newly developed bird trail is pretty amazing, and how the dollars spent, and maybe I underestimated it before we even started, but I knew it was important, but not fully understanding, birding observation is a very major tourism industry, people will come regionally or even nationally to potentially see some of these birds. And we're very fortunate to be in an area where we get the seasonal changes in our birds, so it always keeps it active. So that's what's really exciting. You know, some of the conservation efforts too, the cleanliness of our water, I cannot overstate how important that is. I think that goes for Detroit River, downriver, and anywhere within the Greenway. The amount of work that we've put into it, the ecological value of looking at our Great Lakes waters as a natural resource certainly pays off. I reckon back to something that John said, that every dollar spent results in, you know, in ecology and cleanup results in a $3 to $5 investment within the region. And we have seen that that is very true right here in Macomb County. So, you know, we've had tens of millions of dollars spent with the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, and that's resulting in people's perspective changing about who we are and also where we live. So, I mean, the only other thing I would say about economic development is, in the digital age, people can live wherever they want to in many cases, and that's becoming increasingly true. So giving them access to clean water and recreation is really key for the sustainability of our region. And if we don't recognize that as a scale where we're competing with every other place in the world, then, you know, that's sort of the perspective we need to adopt and make it a great importance. And I think that's why the Great Lakes Way really is sort of aiding us in that perspective.
Yeah, Jerry, I think that's a that's a great point about the uniqueness of what the Great Lakes Way has to offer when it's competing with a lot of other areas across the country, is that clean water resource. That's just huge. And when I'm thinking about the economic impact from other national trails, two that come to mind are the Katy Trail and the Gap Trail. And to Andrea's point, these are both trail systems where the small towns along them embrace the trail, and in turn, the economic benefits have been huge. So, for example, the study, this is an older study, but back in 2011, the Katy Trail, which is a trail in Missouri that's about 200 miles, it goes across most of the state, had an estimated 400,000 annual visitors and generated 18.5 million per year, which translated to 370 jobs. And the Gap Trail just did a recent study in 2019 that this trail generated 121 million in economic impact. And that had an impact of 8.7 million in tax revenue that went back to the state, county, and local governments. So, and this is a trail that goes, it's a 150-mile trail that goes from Cumberland, Maryland, to ending in Detroit or downtown Pittsburgh. So these are both great examples of trails that are kind of similar in size to what the Great Lakes Way will be too. So yeah, big picture, I think, is that the trails create a sustainable economy that even in the face of what just happened with the pandemic and is continuing to happen, these are economies that were able to bridge that and have done a great job of being resilient and continue to boom throughout.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. That's a good perspective to add to this. And we're getting some questions from the audience that are related to some of these that I want to kind of run by you guys. And one is, Jerry brought up the Macomb St. Clair Birding Trail that kind of is connected to this route. And we know there's other projects going on throughout this Great Lakes Way system, such as Destination Downriver, a tourism campaign. How does this connect? How does the Great Lakes Way initiative relate to some of those other ongoing projects in these areas, whether they're trail development or tourism campaigns or economic development projects? John?
Yeah, well, one of the goals is to, protect our amazing continentally significant natural resources and restore portions of it at the same time. So where we have, think of the Detroit River shoreline on the US side. It's 32 miles long, 31 of the 32 miles are hardened with concrete and steel, has no habitat value. So in some of these cases, we can work with the partners and soften the shoreline, enhance habitat. And there's many good examples from the Detroit River Walk to the Refuge Gateway of that going on. We also think about, nowhere, most places in North America would love to have all these natural resources that we have right in our backyard. And so these birding stops that Jerry was talking about, the byways to flyways bird driving tour map for Detroit River has 27 locations in Windsor, Essex County, Southwest Ontario, and Southeast Michigan. And what a driver of interest for people, and they can go from one to the other. They will literally, you can go on a greenway trail and visit numerous of these sites. So they are points of interest. They are attractions, and they have places, as Andrea said, where they want to go have a cup of coffee, they want to get an ice cream, they want to have some dinner. There's some amazing things that can be done together. So in many respects, not only will the greenways and blueways reconnect people to water, but it will help with stewardship of our water resources as well.
That sounds good. So in terms of the question, it sounds like any projects within this network, that the Great Lakes the Great Lakes Way kind of lifts projects up and helps them connect with each other, and gives them sort of a framework to think about, community to community, communities to natural resources, and enhancing those connections. So that's great. And I think, there are other versions of this throughout the region, and there's probably a lot of other ways that these projects could be tied together. We also had some questions about certain destinations and specifically challenges within our region about exploring trails like this, is finding places to camp if you're doing long trips, like some of these bigger routes like Andrea mentioned. We know that where there are campgrounds in our region from the Park Finder app that I shared earlier, and they're kind of few and far between, and could be challenging for people. Does anyone have any thoughts on that particular challenge of our region, or how other parts of the state that or places that we could compare ourselves to that may be dealing with something like that, accommodating the users?
I'll take a shot at that to start off, and then others can add to it. But, our experience just in the Detroit River International Wildlife Refuge is many people who want to visit a national park or a national wildlife refuge want to camp too. And there's no immediate camping in the vicinity of the Refuge Gateway. You can go down to Sterling State Park in Detroit, but I think with the visitation that is clearly coming. You look at the Detroit River Walk now, it has 3 million annual visitors. And now the Outdoor Adventure Center is doing some overnight camping with kids at Milliken State Park. I think the demand is going to grow, and I think is an opportunity to create some campgrounds and to reap the benefits of that as well in an urban setting. What sets us apart is not only these continentally significant natural resources, but we're also the industrial heartland and the arsenal of democracy. And nowhere can you get these kinds of experiences in a single day that we have. So you can kayak down the Rouge River past the Ford Rouge plant and, past Marathon and out into the Detroit River. What an amazing experience that you can get nowhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, Tyler, I was going to maybe just add to that a little bit too. So we recognized the lack of camping in Macomb area because we have these national fishing tournaments, right? And so they're televised across the country. People come from all over the country after they see the fishing spot and want to experience it. So what happens is they use our DNR boat launches and such. But the first question they usually ask is, where can we camp? They ask the guard gates, so we know there's this like pent up demand just from that industry alone, let alone those who are biking or hiking or birding or whatever it may be. It's the same thing. So we have actually looked at a feasibility of camping within Macomb County, and one of the areas was on the air base where they had some coastal area, but that is sort of out of the question based on their current mission. So we are, we're punting and we're looking again at where that maybe it's a Lake St. Clair Metro Park or, up in Wetzel State Rec area, seeing if, we can get a partner from the DNR or the Metro Parks to accommodate camping, because we know that there is this demand for that within the region. So that's sort of our local response.
Yeah, and I want to expand upon that as well. I think there is a great opportunity for the communities and the towns along this corridor to really capitalize that and embrace that opportunity to provide some camping. We've seen a trend across the country where other forms of camping beyond just tent camping or rural camping have become very popular with, the yurts or glamping, and those provide a great opportunity for communities to set something like that up, or have a county park or something that incorporates that type of camping. And there's an example. Europe's been doing this for a long time, and recently it's become a trend here in the United States to do kind of a hut-to-hut camping. So that could be a great opportunity. And even the bed and breakfast. I know that I love camping, but my parents do not. We love to travel together, and so they're always looking for what's that alternative option. And types of areas that offer a diverse opportunity for me to camp outside, but for other folks that would rather have a better or different accommodations, that could be provided as well.
Yeah, it sure is interesting to think about in terms of our region. It doesn't look like how things look today, but as we plan for more people and provide more opportunities for people to get outside, it's definitely a consideration we want to have. And I kind of want to take that same idea and shift gears a little bit with it, and touch on some of the environmental topics that folks have brought up. So we know that we are a largely developed and more urbanized region, and that some of our natural resources either need restoration or they're not very accessible. So what are some ways or some examples within the region that where people are providing that access, but also protecting the natural resources that are the draw for getting there? Jerry?
Maybe
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Jerry. That's fine.
Or I think all three of us had something to say, but I'd like to say that, about 17 years ago, when I had started at the county, the Clinton River was a natural feature asset that went right through the heart of the county and was developed primarily along the river. And as we found it in that situation, it was once considered the most polluted river in the region or within the state. And also suffered from like emerald ash, where there was, you could measure the blockages in the river with, in acreage. And we had the people from downriver that were launching the downriver effort there. And we said, can you come out and just help us assess this? And they went and did an area of about 7 miles between Bloomer, park in Rochester, Yates Cider Mill down to downtown Utica. And we had, I hate to say this, but we had over 40 blockages just in that area. So this was insurmountable, but it was like everyone came together through the Waterside Council and the county and the local governments. And we actually 2 years ago could claim that our river was completely free of blockages. And we have a Blueway plan that has been implemented. And now we're getting over 10,000 boat trips, paddle trips down our river with 2 different vendors in place, utilizing the river. And now each of the communities are putting their focus back on their rivers with their master planning. We've added 5 different boat launches, and then 2 more universally designed ones are going in this year. So what we're seeing is a huge success story. It's one of the best urban rivers you're going to find anywhere in the country. And we're fortunate to have that right here in our region. And who would have known 20 years ago, right? So it's a matter of where you put your focus and your money. So.
Thanks, Jerry. Any others want to, John?
Sure. I'll like think of, 15 years ago on the Detroit Riverwalk, and how much of it was industrial brownfield that was fenced off with barbed wire and no public access to it. But it had to go through a process of brownfield cleanup and clean it up. And then what an opportunity to build the Riverwalk and then build some of these pocket parks and to restore habitats, build green infrastructure as demonstration areas. So it can be done. So I think you have to have people with the right vision, and you have to have all the people at the table from the beginning to make that a reality. But that's really gives hope for these other areas that we can do something like that in these other areas as well.
Great. Pat, did you have anything to add from this one too? I thought I saw you on mute.
Yeah, and you both touched on things that I was thinking about, and John, just that the thing that comes to mind is when you were talking was the riverfront, Detroit Riverfront Promenade, that area. And I think there's such a cool story here about how for thousands of years people were drawn to this area because of these rivers, and whether it was for travel or for industry. And now that we don't necessarily use them as much for industry, some of these places have fallen into a blighted area of the community. And there's just a great opportunity to transform these areas and to highlight them again. And you kind of touched on some of that, but that Riverfront Promenade is one of the areas that stand out to me as a great opportunity to highlight the river again. And use it for, just use it for a new form of the economy, which is this outdoor recreation.
Yeah, it's, with that, the riverfront attracts so many people from all over the region, from people who work in the area, live in the area. It's just kind of like a magnet if you're anywhere around it, and people are just drawn there. It's great to kind of think about extending that throughout our shoreline. So I guess with that in mind, the last kind of topic we want to talk about is that the Great Lakes Way aims to be welcoming and inclusive of all users, and not just people walking and biking and paddling, but people of all backgrounds, ages, abilities, level of familiarity with the outdoors or the area, which is a wonderful vision. But what does that look like in practice, and how can trails be developed with sort of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion principles in mind, so that it's something that is really there for everybody? Any examples of that or insights around it?
Yeah, think of when they started the Detroit Riverwalk nearly 20 years ago, and with a goal of being welcoming to all, with benefits to all. And you go today and walk in it, it's the most diverse place in all of Michigan. You will see people of all cultures and races down there. They also, with these greenway extensions like the DeQuinder Cut that goes up to Eastern Market and to the Midtown and Wayne State University and New Center area, it's connecting neighborhoods. Now we have the Dennis Archer Greenway, and we'll have the Southwest Greenway as other extensions to make sure the people in the neighborhoods that all benefit from the Detroit Riverwalk. One of the priorities of the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan will be Southwest Detroit, River Rouge, and Ecorse, areas that have traditionally been underserved. And they have not received the kind of attention in federal, state, and other grants that other areas have. And so one good example of that is we got word that the Economic Development Administration was going to be giving out some money to communities in need and ones that had a coal-fired power plant going away. And so we approached DTE Energy, and they immediately said River Rouge, Michigan, and the River Rouge power plant is closing. We got together and put a team together with the city of River Rouge to put in a grant for $1 million for greenways to connect the downtown of River Rouge to their small park, Belanger Park on the river, another park on Jefferson called Memorial Park, and a fitness park. And then, of course, connected up to Southwest Detroit and down to the city of Ecorse as well. So there's no guarantees on that, but we're able to help them build their capacity to put in a quality grant proposal to hopefully get funded in that. They're going to be building a platform in the Detroit River that extends out into the Detroit River to observe the construction of the new Gordie Howe International Bridge. It'll be the best place to see this real time on the river. On the south side of Belanger Park will be a kayak launch. Instead of just building it along the shoreline, they're going to create some sinuosity in the shoreline and come in and be able to create a backwater with some soft shoreline there for enhancing habitat in an area that's traditionally been all steel sheet piling and concrete breakwater. So what a great opportunity for this to help communities in need. So another one is, a good example is nobody knows this. Very few people know this, is that the city of Ecorse has Dingle Park at the foot of Southfield Boulevard. It's like one of the top destinations in the Great Lakes for wildlife photography, especially in the winter, where they'll have up to 40 bald eagles nested, on Mud Island, and you can see waterfowl staging. And you will go out there and you'll see 50 people with spotting scopes and cameras with telephoto lenses and stuff. What a great thing to make that better, connect that with greenways. So we have some unique opportunities to address some of these issues in this area of Southwest Detroit, River Rouge, and Ecorse.
And Tyler, if I could just add, at MITGA, Michigan Trails and Greenways Alliance, we view trails as the gateway to the outdoors, right? Because there really is a low barrier of entry to experiencing a trail. You really only have to have a pair of shoes, and sometimes you may not even need that to get out there. So we see a lot of people who are interested in exploring the outdoors but don't know where to start. They turn to their local trail or their local park and start exploring. And after COVID, we saw an influx, right, of these new users who were maybe unaware of these assets that were really close to home to them. And of those demographics of some of the studies we've seen, they're younger, female, and of diverse backgrounds. So how do we keep these new users engaged and also promote this inclusive atmosphere? And I think we have a responsibility as managers of these assets, but also as users, because with the influx in users, we also got a lot of complaints from users about trail etiquette and not knowing, but you can't blame somebody for something that they may not know. So if it's their first time experience, why not be welcoming? Why not help them out? I think raising the awareness of these amenities that are out there and making sure it's communicated that, hey, this exists and this is how you get there. This is what it's connected to. I think we could all do a better job of promoting those in our communities. But when you really look at trails and how great they are, because they provide that introductory level to the outdoors, that maybe people are content just walking their dog on their trail, but maybe people walk a trail and they're like, oh, I'm interested in getting a bike or mountain biking or hiking. It then takes it to the next step. So I think we have an opportunity, all of us here on this phone, to really embrace and grab these new users who could be future advocates for these assets that we have in our community.
Very good. Good comments, Andrea. And one really specific thing that has happened in Macomb County is access to Lake St. Clair Metro Park. There was it was through SEMCOG grant, actually. We were looking at accessibility for, people from throughout the region. So we know that there's already a bus route along Gratiot Avenue. In fact, it's one of the heaviest used corridors for transit in Southeast Michigan. And at Macomb Mall, we were able to work with our trail coordinator and the Metro Parks to actually create a connection from the mall to Lake St. Clair Metro Park through SMART. So now there's an independent service that can be held through SMART that will allow anyone of any capacity, whether they have a vehicle or not, or with disabilities, can now access Lake St. Clair Metro Park with just a little bit of knowledge about that. And so we feel that that's a great success of really doing an outreach to the community to make sure that, when we say access for everybody, we really mean that. We want to try and emphasize how do we make our areas access, because we all own our assets, right? So to make that those areas are really, truly more accessible.
Yeah.
John?
Tyler, yeah, what an opportunity we have, like if you look at the Bridge to Bay Trail up in St. Clair County and Sturgeon Week, and to bring all the next generation down there and to have a fun educational experience. So an opportunity to teach environmental education and conservation. Down in Monroe County, the River Raisin Heritage Trail, it leads from downtown to Sterling State Park and River Raisin National Battlefield Park. What an opportunity to teach stewardship of natural resources as well. So that's getting at the next generation, and these are incredible assets to be able to do that as well.
Agreed. And thanks, John. Thanks, Jerry and Pat and Andrea as well for joining. That is the time that we have for today's webinar. So it's been a really good discussion, and I know we've been focused around the Great Lakes Way as the focus for this discussion, but there's so much that I think extends to regional trail planning beyond that. So I hope that everyone that has joined us today has gotten, some sparked some ideas around this and thinking about how they can better connect and uplift projects around their trails and their waterways. So thanks again to everyone for joining the webinar today. Our next SEMCOG webinar will be in a couple of weeks. It'll be, I believe it's March 2nd, and it'll be on planning for electric vehicles. So if that's of interest to you, please find more information about that on SEMCOG's website. And thanks again for joining us. Have a good day.